Okay.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting of the Board of Directors to order. I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded. Jonathan, can you do roll call?
Director Brandt,
Here.
Director Aguilar, Director
Here.
Bertrand. Oh, there.
Here.
Director Freeman,
Here.
Director Flaherty,
Here.
Director Topliff,
Here.
Director Dashler.
Here.
All right. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anascoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Now we are going to move to the consent agenda. Do any directors have items that they'd like to pull from the consent agenda? I see a hand from Director Bertrand.
Yes, I would like a separate vote for item 2.10, just since I'm going to recuse from that particular item. So I would move the balance of the consent agenda. So motion to approve items 2.1 through 2.9.
All right, there's a motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Deschler. Before we vote on it, I do really want to highlight and say congrats again to the Compost Collective for winning the Youth Making Change grant from the Fund for Santa Barbara. And what an incredible program, and big thanks to the Fund for Santa Barbara for their support, and congrats to the Compost Collective. All right, with that, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Topliff,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Dashler,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Now we'll consider item 2.10 with Director Bertrand recusing. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Motion made by Topliff. Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Deschler. Any further discussion from the board on this? All right, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Flaherty,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Topliff,
Yes.
Director Dashler,
Yes.
Director Aguilar.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. So with that, we're going to move to the public comment period. This is the time for any member of the public to speak on any item that is not on today's agenda. If you have comments on something on the agenda, we'll take public comment under those items. And so I'll open it up for public comment. You can hit the raise hand button or put something in the chat. Are there any speakers tonight? I'm seeing none, so I will close the public comment period, and we will move on to our first agenda item. I think we're going to trail closed session at the end. Is that okay, Jonathan? Or do
We do need to do it at the beginning.
Got it. Okay. So we're going to enter closed session. Do you have an estimated time on this for the public?
It should be 10 to 15 minutes max.
All right.
So then triple that.
Yeah, that's for me, 10 to 15. That's not.
We'll try to run a tight shift. All right. So for those of you who are in the public, you're going to be placed in the waiting room, and you'll be readmitted once we are finished with closed session. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. I wish they had
Good on you. All right, we are reconvening from open session. Council, can you report out?
Yes, the Board of Directors was in closed session for initial employee performance for the Community Engagement Director and the Isla Vista Compost Collective Program Manager. That was authorized under Government Code 54957, subsection B1. The board had discussions regarding the performance of those two positions, but there's no reportable action at this time.
All right, thank you for that, Council. So next, we are going to move to discussion and action items. And the first item on our agenda is the Spring Festival 2022 Professional Services Agreement with CBF Productions. This is from our Spring Festival Ad-Hoc Committee, myself, Director Topliff, and Director Flaherty. We've talked about this a lot, so I think we'll get right to it, and I'll hand it over to Jonathan for the staff report.
Okay, give me one quick second. I'm trying to text our guest to make it back in if you can. Give me 1 second. Okay, so let me get my share screen and okay, so this is the staff report for the Spring Festival, and the recommended actions are to, I'm going to go over the more details, but just to start with the recommended action, which is to adopt the purpose statement for the event, which is the guiding principle for what we're doing, enter into a contract with CBF Productions to plan the event, to direct staff to work closely with them to do the community outreach and determine the specific program details of the event, and then to direct staff to finalize the IVRPD park rental permit. So that's what we're trying to do today. This is some background on the district's history with community events, and specifically this weekend. We've had it in our Measure R language to operate community facilities and events. In 2019, we did a very, very protracted and long effort with many community stakeholders to plan an event for March or for April 2020 that didn't move forward because of COVID. So we had been working on this for many years, and we did set a goal in our last board retreat to work on developing a community festival. So this is one of our board goals that we wanted to get done this year. The purpose statement that we had set is, I'll just read it. The purpose of the Isla Vista Alternative event is to provide a fun, safe, and healthy alternative for residents of all ages to create and enjoy arts, culture, and food during the daytime event known as Altopia. So yeah, that's the event statement. So some details of the event that are updated from when we last spoke to the board. The first is safety. So Spencer and I had the chance to meet with the lieutenant from the Foot Patrol, Lieutenant Miller, and we are on our way to meet with the UCPD officers soon, since we were informed by Director Deschler that UCPD's has oversight on that area during April 2nd. But what we discussed so far is, and what we discussed with IVRPD in terms of what their history with security needs has been at other large events they've had, is 1 security officer per 100 people, and at least 2 law enforcement officers, which was also the recommendation of the Ivy Foot Patrol. So that's how we're planning to move forward, is 15 security officers and 2 law enforcement, along with EMTs. The goal is for the 15 security officers to take care of the vast majority of the issues, and only if it's, escalates to a serious level with the law enforcement officers get involved. But the other safety aspects of the event are the free water to help people be hydrated, food to keep people fed, and having just a less crowded, safe area from the private events or what's going on the road. In terms of COVID-19 protocols, we are working with UCSB to determine what their COVID-19 event protocols are and wanting to mirror after those. So we haven't gotten the updated ones yet, but that's the plan, is to mirror the UCSB ones. Just a thing to note, it did come up in the last meeting, is out-of-town attendees. The goal is to focus on keeping it safe, keeping it local, to only focus the marketing on a limited period, 5 days before the event, if even 5 days, only in Isla Vista, and only using local performers to attract people. So this would not be something that has a lot of time to have out-of-towners even know about or to even care about. Is our goal. It's a local event with local fare, and only marketed limited time locally. The timeline is, hopefully we approve the contract today. If we do, we have until around March 4th, the end of next week, to finalize the park rental information with IVRPD. I flipped my dates, but on March 1st, we're presenting to UCSB stakeholders. And in mid-March, we're gonna hopefully secure funding from our partners at UCSB and Santa Barbara City College, which we had that partnership before, like noted next. We had a previous commitment of 30,000 and 5,000 from each. So we hope to continue the conversations and secure the ask by then. March 28th is limited marketing in Isla Vista, and then April 2nd would be the event. The funding for the event, 55,000 from our community festival fund, 30,000 from the UCSB sunset allocation, which we had received 2 years ago, and 5,000 from the City College Foundation, which we received 2 years ago. And then this next section is, give me one quick moment, make sure we don't have someone in the waiting room. This next section is what our event production manager will be doing. So CVF Productions, this is their team. They will handle operations, logistics, production, booking of artists, stage, sound, vendors, they'll take care of everything under our direction. They'll take care of rentals and placements and deliveries and pickup. They will be helping us with the county fire permit, which we've been advised is straightforward, but needs to be done soon. They'll be developing a site map, a security map, emergency plans for the area. They'll be handling insurance. They'll be helping with community outreach. They'll be participating in it. We will be leading it as we normally do, but they will be participating in some of those meetings just to help develop buy-in. They'll help bring in fencing and porta potties. They'll create a stage and lighting and everything we need to have a nice looking show. They'll run the whole day. They'll work with all the talent. They will make sure that all the talent's ready to go. They'll hire the guards, the security guards, and the EMTs, and they'll contract with law enforcement, and also the cleanup. So this is the budget that they're proposing of all this. For 89,500. And so yeah, that comes back down to the recommended action. So that's the end of the report.
Thank you.
And then if anyone wants a visual aid, I can do a visual aid real quick of the event, the concept. It's not really a final plan, but it's the event concept is fencing on. If you look at it, there's, here's one side fenced, here's another side fenced. The community center is like partially another side fenced. And there is fencing along this entire down row here. And we've discussed with them putting up some low impact fencing, like bike racks or, short white picket fences, not like the taller, green or gray fences. So if we wanted to add more structure to the event, we've discussed that with them of, kind of like, then that was part of the 2020 event as well. So it's kind of like bike rack fencing. So yeah, that's the presentation. Turn it over to our committee.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Jonathan. Carrie or Catherine, do you have anything that you want to share to add to this?
Nothing else huge to add, mainly just that we've been in communication with the university through this, and we're also attending Deltopia meetings that are occurring with different community stakeholders as well as a committee, just to keep everyone informed if they didn't see our emails or anything. So we are keeping those lines of communication as open as possible.
And we certainly have a lot of enthusiasm from those partners who are very eager for us to do this and do a good job, as we expect to do. And we've also met with the Isla Vista Park Recreation Park District because the event will happen on one of their parks, and they have some experience with doing this kind of thing, and they were very helpful in giving us a long summary of everything we had to think about and what we had to do and so forth. So they've been very good partners as well.
Thank you for sharing that, Catherine and Carrie. And I will also add, I'll speak about this more in my general report to the board, but Jonathan and I had a chance to meet with the new Lieutenant Jarrett Morse from the Isla Vista Foot Patrol, and he was very helpful, and I think had a lot of good perspectives to share. And I was very interested and supportive of this effort. And he was the one who shared with us that 2 deputies would be the number that was required, which was great. It was kind of right in line with what we had been thinking, right in the range of what the event proposal or promoter had been thinking. And so that was a good meeting. And I'll share more about other topics from that meeting later in reports. But I also just want to share, because I want to address, I think, what is a little bit of the elephant in the room, which is that nightlife in Isla Vista recently has been not the safest. This weekend we saw an act of gun violence on our streets, a young man who was shot by a gun and is thankfully recovering, but his life will be forever changed because of that. And my understanding from Lieutenant Morris is that there's an ongoing investigation for the suspects, and that law enforcement does believe this is an isolated incident. They don't know if the suspects are from Isla Vista or from elsewhere in the county or in the state. And this is just such a stark reminder that these private organized social events are not without risk. And I think it's a big contrast, and it really punctuates for me the importance of what we're doing here. The mission statement of providing a fun, safe, and healthy space for residents to enjoy arts and culture. And I think that it's that sort of safe environment that I hope well on into the future will eventually come to subsume what we know right now as Deltopia, and create a safe environment for all Isla Vista residents. So with that, I want to open it up to questions from the board.
Questions only, not opinions, right?
Well, I'll start with questions first, and then we'll go to opinions. I see a hand from Director Deschler.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Thank you. I wanted to ask a question about the security officer. So security officer is someone who doesn't have a gun. Is that right? They're different from a law enforcement officer. Yeah. Okay. And then it says 2 law enforcement officers will be hired for that event. Does that mean that they hire like UCPD, or they hire, when you say hire, who do they hire?
Foot Patrol.
So then they would hire Foot Patrol. Okay, got it. And then I want to just say something about, or ask something about the contract as it's structured now. 55,000 would come from the Isla Vista Fund for community events. But this contract is predicated on getting $35,000 from the university and from the city college. And so my question is this, is that my understanding is that the university gives $200,000 per year to the IVCSD for various things. And that if the IVCSD wants to use those funds, then there's a dialogue that happens between the university and IVCSD on that 200,000 or a portion of that 200,000. So are you suggesting then that 30,000 would be a request to UCSB from that 200,000? Or are you suggesting that this is new funding that was came about in a conversation that you had with Student Affairs 2 years ago on Sunfest?
Yeah, it's funding from Sunfest, and it was confirmed when we went into our board meeting in 2010. It was something that we had confirmed, but it wasn't out of the $200,000.
Okay, so I would say that it's a little concerning to me to approve a contract based upon a promise, or based upon I shouldn't even say a promise, I'll say a conversation, because I think that was several years ago and the situation is different now. And so I would just say that we might want to consider as we well, Spencer's probably growling at me now. Are you growling at me, Spencer, that I was going to suggest something?
I've got something important I think to follow up with, but go ahead.
Okay, so anyways, I was just going to say maybe there's a way that we can structure the motion to take into account that 30,000. Okay, and then my last question, since I see two law enforcement folks on the line, is that I wondered if there has been any decision made about beach closure, because I had heard that there maybe is an open question as to whether the sheriff's office will have the beach closed this year. And then that concludes my questions.
Thanks for that, Director Deschler. The only thing that I was gonna, I think, add into that is I think that with the timeline such as it is, in order to get the ball rolling on planning the event, a big part of this is the consulting and the permitting. And so we definitely have the funds to cover that just from district funds alone. And I think we'll continue to engage with our partners in terms of really getting across the finish line as far as that funding goes. And then I don't know if Justin Schroeder or Ariel Bornet are on the line and can speak to the beach element of all of this.
Yes, as of right now, the beaches will be closed. That's per an ordinance by the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors. So we don't have an opinion one way or another. If they would like to change that, we'd be happy to open the beaches, but that's a conversation to have with the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you for sharing that, Justin. Are there any other questions from board members? Director Freeman.
Follow up on that. I mean, has somebody heard that the Board of Supervisors might open the beach? I'm a little bit confused as to, like, is it more that we're thinking that the Board of Supervisors might suddenly decide not to close, or that they will actually actively go to open? Like, I'm kind of shocked that they would suddenly decide to open the beach, but maybe.
Okay, so I just need to say, since I'm a big fan of good information and not bad information, I will just say that I only heard that the sheriff's office was proposing to keep the beaches open. And now I'm thinking that was really bad information. And so I didn't realize it was part of the Board of Supervisors' responsibility. So I'll just say I probably heard something incorrect. Let's hope so.
Thank you for that clarification. Are there other questions from board members? Cool. Well, I'll open it up for discussion. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. I always mess up the process. Before we enter discussion, I think we're going to go to public comment, and we're going to allow public members to speak. So you can hit the raise hand button or put something in the chat if you would like to share a comment. The first hand that I see is Mark, always quick on the draw with the hand. Go ahead, Mark Vukcevic.
Thanks, Spencer. And thanks not for not forgetting about the public here. Appreciate it. I just wanted to say that I support this motion. I really think this is really well thought out. I'm really appreciative of the thought that was put into it by the 3-member committee. And so, just as a member of the public, I think this is really an amazing, an amazing chance to really remake Deltopia in the image that we want to see for a safer, brighter Isla Vista, especially as norms are getting recreated at the university with both this kind of post-COVID timeline, as well as it being pretty far away, actually, honestly, and in terms of generations of UCSB students, pretty far away from the really crazy old days of Deltopia. And so, and so I look forward to, I hope that this gets passed. I support, everyone supporting this. And yeah, thank you all.
Thank you for your comments, Mark. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and we'll bring it back to the board now for discussion. Director Freeman.
There we go. So I'll be voting no on this, and I'm now providing my spiel on why. And as because on the board, I should be providing the public information on why I do the things that I do. So in addition to all of the jurisdictional and political issues that I've talked about in the past with relation to the Isla Vista Recreation and Parks District, having a power with relation to events and the planning strategies that they have had, and the extent to which I felt that it's not something that we either could do or potentially should do, depending on how you want to look at that analysis from a policy perspective. I will continue to note that this is a large percentage of our budget that is being allocated towards a non-revenue generating event. Now, I recognize that in the past, I have been extremely pro running events such as this event, but I will also note that whenever I have ever talked about those in the past 7, 8 years that I have been advocating that there be events such as this event, I've always been advocating for revenue generating events that involve selling wristbands, that have websites that organize, and the part of the goal being to actually tie it into the business community as well, and to not necessarily move out of towners, but to try to make the event that it had been happening safer by partly by way of having the gatekeeping of, if there's a $40 fee associated with it, I bet you won't get to the same kind of problems you normally do. In this case, however, it seems like a large percentage of our budget that is now being allocated. Now, for what it's worth, I'm very happy to see that it is less than the 100,000 that has been brought up at previous meetings, but it is still a large enough percentage that I kind of am awkwardly hoping that a large percentage of our population actually shows up to this event. When benefits of the programs that we have accrue asymmetrically to our population, I personally try to prefer it to be progressive, where we're taking resources from people who otherwise might not need the resources, and we're providing it to people who need the resources. In this case, I fear that throwing non-revenue generating parties is penalizing people who might have been cutting back, forcing them in some sense by way of our governmental tax process to spend money on a party, maybe because we're essentially telling them you should get out and spend money on that party. I particularly, since I personally feel like these events have probably mostly died. Now, I don't know that for sure, but that is, and the pandemic, of course, is something that makes it very difficult to do that analysis. But I do feel that given the pattern that we've been seeing before the pandemic, that the goal of alternative events is now somewhat suspect. To the extent to which the goal of alternative events is still very important for the community as a whole, I feel like IVRPD's plan, which has been to spread events throughout the time period and have a number of Anascoyo music events, might make more sense. And from that perspective, I might actually now be concerned that throwing such a party is actually reminding a community that has actively not had this event due to the pandemic for 2 years, plus issues before it, combined with all of the work that had been done before in order to kill this event, is now reminding this area that, hey, this is a moment that you should all be going outside and almost could reboot the event. So I will be voting no on this, but I appreciate that I am probably still 1 of 7 for that opinion, but that is where I am at with this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Director Freeman. Are there other comments from board members?
Yes, if I may, I just want to say I'm really proud of the progress that we've made towards this. For a long time, this has been a goal not only of our district, but of our community. And this is an excellent opportunity for us to create a really positive experience for community members. We know that we still have these safety issues. Respectfully, Director Freeman, I know many of us on the board are out there walking the streets during Deltopia, and I've just pulled up on my iPad pictures of concern from last year where we visited multiple medical emergencies, issues of violence, and issues of overcrowding at properties. And there were a lot of great things that happened last Deltopia too. I'm sure many people had a good time, but I just put that out there to demonstrate the real need for us to continue to improve safety. Some critics in the community have said that the IVCSD wants to spend money on throwing parties. I reject that rhetoric. This is about creating a positive atmosphere for community members to enjoy Isla Vista and to move past stereotypes of what Deltopia is, and to really chart the future for a more positive event, something that brings Isla Vista residents to the heart of our community, to connect with one another and to enjoy in a safe and healthy manner. So with that, I'm enthusiastically supporting.
Thank you for your comments, Director Bertrand. Director Deschler.
I just really want to echo what Ethan said. I mean, this is not a party, right? This is about public safety. This is about providing people with an opportunity to do something different than congregating on the streets in an unorganized way. So I don't see it as a party. I just see it as another aspect of IVCSD doing something to promote safety in the community, and especially in light of what happened in DP this weekend. I think the board doing something positive in this direction and giving people something positive to do and a safe event is so right up the alley of IVCSD. So I really want to use my time. I just want to say thank you to Jonathan for the work that you did. You know, this was and also Carrie and Catherine and Spencer. You know, I know you put out an RFP, you didn't get what you were expecting, and you really made it work with a lot of limitations. And I think it's very thoroughly planned out so far. I'm disappointed we weren't able to hear from the folks that are going to be doing the work and helping you. But I just really want to say that I appreciate all the work that you guys put into this to have a fully developed proposal in such a little amount of time. I just think it's just a testament to a lot of work that you guys have done, that it looks so good. And then the last comment I'll make is that I definitely am, and I expressed it earlier, I am concerned that that this budget is predicated on funds that are not committed by the university and by City College, and that they're based on a promise of 2 years ago. And so I just, I know we have to get the ball moving. I'm not suggesting that. I think we definitely need to move forward, but we may want to consider having a backup plan in terms of that extra $30,000 to $35,000.
Can I just speak on the backup plan?
Yeah.
Which if we do, I think we can give a report at the next board meeting on the 8th in terms of where things are going with the requests. But a backup plan is the $56,000 we received from the state in COVID relief dollars, which actually a large amount of that $56,000 was spent on mitigating Halloween in Deltopia during COVID anyways. Like, it's money we spent for the nighttime virtual concert, 20,000, and maybe almost 10,000 in door hangers, and that pretty much is 30,000. So if you wanted to think of it that way, it's money we spent in 2 last fiscal years that were during COVID, we got reimbursed for them, and it was around Deltopia and Halloween and around mitigating them. So kind of brings the money full circle. So it's a backup plan.
And thank you for your comments, Director Deschler. I don't want to give the impression that that we're being blasé about that commitment, and really, of course, do want to continue those dialogues and want to also be able to have those plans more fleshed out by having a hired event planning staff. I think Jonathan and our staff are great. Carrie and Catherine have done a great job as well, but none of us are experts in this. And so by bringing on an expert, we're going to be able to get it to that point where I think we can iron out the details that folks have been asking about and wanting to provide feedback on and provide input on. But I appreciate your comments about that because that's really important. Any other comments from directors?
How long is the event?
12:30 to 5:30. 5 hours.
So it's going to end before it gets dark?
Yeah, and before the noise ordinance or before the festival ordinance.
Excellent. And I think that we have the California or the CBF Productions event manager, Vincenzo, on the call now with us. I think was having a little bit of Zoom trouble. But Vincenzo, do you want to just introduce yourself to the board?
Yeah. Let me turn my, sorry guys. Hey, how you doing? I'm Vincenzo with CBF Productions. We are based out of, we're local, based out of Ventura County, and we produce large scale festivals. So we've been doing this for about 15 years, and we do everything from concept to execution. So we were very excited when we were approached with this opportunity, and we hope to kind of plant the seed of this year one concept and grow it and make it everything that the community is looking for.
Thank you for sharing that, Vincenzo. And board, does anyone have any specific questions for Vincenzo? Well, seeing none, we'll keep you on just a second if in case that there's any more discussion or comments. But thanks for just being here, and thanks for all your work putting together the details and the outline of the scope of work for this. I think it's very detailed. It's definitely what we're looking for and gives us a good pathway forward to execute this between now and April 2nd. For our board, I want to make a couple of comments before this. I appreciate that I see Director Bertrand put the image in the chat of what Deltopia looked like last year. And I'll say with my own attitude about large events in Isla Vista, ever since we were created and ever since I've been president of the board, I've been asked to be brought into different conversations that are happening at the university, usually the university or the county level, about two big events in Isla Vista. The first is Halloween, and the second is Deltopia. Every year that I have been in Isla Vista, Halloween has not happened. To the historical record that I can tell, Halloween has not happened in Isla Vista since 2013. And I often have not been shy about sharing with our partners and anyone that will listen that a lot of our work around Halloween, I feel, kind of creates it into existence in a way, or has the potential to create it into existence by doing all these different measures for something that isn't happening. My attitude towards Deltopia is very different, and it's based on my personal experience living in Isla Vista and seeing how it unfolds every single year. We've seen years where there have been more attendees. I think to 2019, where I think that we had 20,000 plus. We've seen years that we've had less attendees. 2020, during the very beginning stages of the pandemic, where we had, before we knew the pandemic was going to be a factor, started working towards this goal of creating an alternative event. And I think that while it may be comforting and convenient for us to hope that we have turned the corner on our own, or that Isla Vista culture is not going to revert to what we've seen in the past, I think that standing idly by and not making the moves to put this event into place would be a mistake, because we would be giving up all control that we have, all power that we have to influence and change the culture for the better in a permanent way. And I think that a lot of the a lot of the goals that you mentioned in your comments, Director Freeman, are goals of mine too for the future. I think that they're goals of our event planner. We've talked about, we should be thinking about this in terms of expanding in future years to be able to get to some of those goals, where we have maybe a ticketed system, where we have a more robust lineup. And in my mind, where our event eventually becomes the only game in town and is the one thing that happens on that weekend to try and mitigate what we've seen happen in the past when there's been total sort of individual private parties. We're not there yet. We're taking the first step, and I'm proud that we are going to do that tonight. I think we've set ourselves up well. I also really want to thank Jonathan for all the work that he's put into this, not just in the last 6 months, but over all of 2019 and 2020, when we had such a robust public input process and heard from the community that it was time for a change, and that we could do something really positive. And I want to thank the community for making their voices heard, because I think that this, it's a great example of something that I love about Isla Vista. When I first came to this community, this was something that people would talk about, the idea of doing an organized alternative event during Deltopia to make it safer. And now here we are, years later, actually moving forward to execute that. I think that that's so important, and a testament to the public calls that we have heard to make Deltopia safer and to do it in this way. So I'll conclude my comments with that, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of the Spring Festival staff recommendations.
Motion made by Bertrand. Is there a second? Seconded by Topliff. Any further board comment before we go to a roll call vote? All right, seeing none. Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Flaherty,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Topliff,
No, wait, no, sorry, no. I'm
Director Bertrand. I'm not going to question you.
Glad we were so persuasive.
Oh, man, we might have had a moment of connection there.
boy.
Let's get back to it.
I'm yes. I'm not going to change my mind. I'm yes.
Okay, Director Bertrand
Yes.
and Director Aguilar.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thanks, everyone. Again, this will not be the last time that you hear of this. We're looking forward to the updates, and to Vincenzo and CBF, thank you. We're super happy to be working with you and your team, and looking forward to making this event happen.
Thank you, guys. Look forward to working with you.
All right, next we're going to move to item 5.2. This is a more boring topic. This is the budget discussion on employee salary ranges and benefits. I'll hand it over to Jonathan.
Great, thank you. So this is number 2 in our budget series of agenda items. So we had Compost Collective last week. We're on employee salaries and benefits, this week. We'll keep moving forward on more topics in the future. So the point of this discussion is to discuss our salary ranges and benefits and retirement in the context of how they affect our budget moving forward or in this year. And so I'll review kind of like what our status quo is. I'll mainly focus on the salaries because there are no recommended changes for the benefits or the retirement, but I'll go into the impacts there. But our salaries right now are what they are here in the current annual salary range. This is what our ranges are. And here's the current pay level for each employee. When we construct the budget, I use the high end of the range to build the budget. Normally, not always. If we don't have the position filled, I use the high end of the range. This is the first time we've got positions filled like this. So we are going to have to figure out how we want to build the budget. But what I've done in the past is use the high end and the range in our budget assumptions. I think it's the best way to go, because if we don't hit that, then we can adjust the budget, or if we do hit it, then we're in our budget. So this is the current level of pay. Here's where we're at now. With the salary ranges, we have a couple different options on how to move forward in the context of the budget. The first option is to do cost of living allowance essentially on the salary ranges and adjust them based on what inflation was this year, which is 7.5% for our region. Might feel like more sometimes, but that's what CPI index says from the government. So we can adjust that, and if we did do just a CPI adjustment on our salaries, here's what the ranges would look like then. And then this is what the additional cost per year is. Additional 26,000 a year budgeting. Doesn't mean we necessarily have to spend it, but that's what it would add to our budget, 26,000. We could do so that's one option for us in terms of the salary ranges, is we can just adjust for inflation. Another thing we can do is we can do another assessment of the salary ranges like we did in 2021. I think it's warranted to do another assessment a year later, because we got to actually test them and use them, and we have actual information now from our hiring process to judge against. But we might not want to always adjust every year in the future, or we might. But I would say, at least for this first year, I say it's a good option to reassess, because we only put them in place a year ago and we finally got to use them. So we can maybe adjust with what we've learned. The other option is to make no changes, easy. And then another option is to do a combination of 1 and 2, which is enact a cost of living CPI increase, and then do a reassessment, which should be easier since we've already done that. And then I do want to note this here, that changing the ranges does not automatically result in pay increases. That's a separate process. For me, it's done by the board, and for the staff, it's done by me. So this is just, we're dealing with the ranges for the positions as if anyone would be in them, and that's how we that's how we've been doing our budgeting. So that's salary. Benefits, medical and dental and vision. So the only change is that the premiums went up, but they went up about $30 a month, which to me seemed way less than I thought it would go up. So we have an additional cost of $400 per employee per year. So it's not bad. That's the new premiums from our coverage GSRMA. And then the retirement, it is a 9% match on the district. Excuse me. And so we have $2,000 additional cost based on the new ranges. So and my recommendation is option 4, which is combinations of enacting a cost of living adjustment and then doing an assessment based on the market. And I would say we should do our cost of living adjustment to January, because we should set the ranges back towards January, because that's when, or February 1st, because that's when the CPI is based on. So that's my report here.
Thank you for the report, Jonathan. Are there questions from board members?
I'm just wondering about the salary assessment that we did as a comparison a year ago. That seemed, or actually less than a year ago. I'm surprised that we're thinking that's out of date. Is there some particular reason why we feel like we need to do that again at this time?
I think it's good to look at it again in the context of what actually happened, because we set the ranges and then we went out to hire. And so now that we've actually done that, I think it's just good to review. We might not make changes, but I think it's good to look at again because we actually used them, where before they were purely theoretical.
But the agencies we'd be comparing against wouldn't necessarily have made any changes since spring of 2021.
We don't know. I mean, well, we get the updated data is now available, so we can start looking at we use the state of California Controller's public employee compensation reports to do that. So that data is now newly available. We can look at.
Okay.
And we have, and like I said, we do have the results of all our hiring processes, which I think there's a correlation between what we put out and how many applications. And
it certainly does seem like important work to me, but just given everything else that's going on and how strapped staff seems to be, I'm wondering if that's really something that we want to spend time on right now.
Right.
It seems like that might be a good idea later on, but for now, the COLA certainly gives us some elbow room, and maybe it's better not to take on that additional relatively complex administrative task.
Can I add, I think this is, Carrie, I appreciate you bringing that up. I think this is a perfect thing for the management partners to do, just because of their experience working in the public sector. They might have real ready access to this information and I wasn't thinking our staff would do it. I was thinking that that we would ask our management partners to do it.
Well, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. We could do that. And this has been in the scope of what we've discussed with them, is helping us, we have discussed having them help us develop employee evaluation procedures and how to make these kinds of decisions. So it would fit in with what else they're doing. And we have our work from last year to thankfully go off of. So we're not starting from scratch. Last time it was very intensive, but I think we've done a lot of our work to help us move forward with.
Any other questions for Jonathan? Director Deschler.
Oh, sorry. I had a question on, I know you've said this before, but I'll ask it again. Let me go back to a little deal about so I can read. Okay, the Compost Collective Program Manager is part-time and the Community Spaces Program Manager is part-time.
Community Spaces is full-time.
Community Spaces Program is full-time. Oh.
Ooh, this is a typo on my end.
Okay.
Oops.
Okay.
It's just flipped. The part-time number should be in the one, but it's just a typo.
Okay, so Community Spaces person is part-time.
No. Spaces is full-time. Compost is part-time.
But then why does it say part-time 2000? Oh,
there's a typo. It's my typo. This is my typo.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just that was just, I just put it one space over.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was just confused there.
Are there any other questions for Jonathan? Okay, I will open up public comment now if any members of the public are interested in speaking on this item, you can hit the raise hand button or you can indicate that you'd like to speak by using the chat feature. Are there any public commenters on this item? I'm not seeing any comments, so I'm going to close the public comment period and bring it back to the board. This is now let's move to discussion. I see a hand from Director Freeman, so you can start.
Thank you. So I've put a lot of thought into this with relation to both our current needs as well as things that have come before LAFCO in the recent past, as well as trying to build a better mental framework for myself with relation to how companies and the companies that I'm involved in deal with salary increases. To me, a core aspect of this is that our employees' costs, the food that they buy, the shelter that they procure, and the interestingly, the utilities that they use, end up getting scaled by inflation. And so if we do not give people a inflation-based cost of living increase, as it were, we're essentially giving them a pay cut. It feels almost cruel to me to not do that. On the other side, our district's costs in general, whether they be paying for food for events, whether it be paying for equipment, whether it be renting things, those also scale by inflation. So it seems almost weird if we don't give our employees we don't pay our employees scaling. It's essentially we're saying that we appreciate why a new extension cable should cost more, but we don't appreciate why a person should cost more. And amazingly, thankfully, and weirdly uniquely, our district's income scales by inflation without any need for any extra going to the public in order to ask for tax increases, without any yearly attempt at changing a figure on one of those benefit assessments, because we are tied to revenue from utilities, which has been in fact scaling faster than inflation, I think, weirdly and somewhat sadly. I thereby strongly believe that our salaries should scale by inflation, and I will even go so strong as to say that the reason I'm saying so strongly is that the sentence that was focused on, that changing ranges does not automatically result in pay increases for employees. I actually think that we should have a policy in place that we firmly give our employees an expectation that they will get a cost of living increase, and that we modify the salary ranges and then scale people's salaries within their ranges based upon that as that happens. Now, performance is harder. Performance, sometimes people look at and trying to tie to raises. And I'm trying to figure out where the right place to provide performance incentive is something that's a complicated problem. At a company, which I'm involved in multiple companies, at companies, the work that is done by the employees makes the company successful. And the company often is attempting to scale its revenue as it goes forward. And it can make decisions with that scaled revenue, can either attempt to hire more new people in order to scale the back end of the business, to reinvest in itself. It can take that money, such as to the shareholders, owners, or the people at the top, or it can let the people who built the success of that company share in the success of that company by providing those revenue increases to the people who are actually working on it. In the case that a company is able to make its revenue twice as much, but the people who are working for it we're not adding more people working for it, I almost want to say that the people who are working for it should be paid twice as much. Now, the issue is that, but then then the question of performance reviews largely, I feel, ends up becoming very important as you do some percentage of giving people raises based upon the success of the company combined with reinvesting the company to increase the scope. Is that some people might be pushing further on their work, and therefore you need to figure out how to fairly reallocate the money that is being paid to different participants. If you have an army of 10,000 people at Google who are all doing work on software development, and some of them have pushed themselves to do twice as much work and some of them haven't, I can appreciate the goal of performance reviews in an attempt to figure out how to fairly reallocate that work. But the problem that I have is that when people have very specific job functions that are unrelated to the people's job functions, I think that it starts getting incredibly awkward how to take performance and tie it to that. Now, that said, I do think that incentives for performance make sense. And so I heard a term had come up before some of the conversations we've had about this of performance bonuses. Maybe that's a way of trying to tie the performance in some way to compensation in order to make it so that people are meeting the original goal of the position without slacking back. Now, I think this is a more interesting thing that I started thinking about is looking at with governments. Governments, however, unlike companies, are typically operating on a somewhat fixed budget. Now, that budget might hopefully be scaling by inflation, but as far as the success of the team does not mean that we increase our revenue. If we do the work that we are trying to do incredibly well, we don't suddenly end up with twice as much tax. And that is true of most forms of government other than government that is really directly tied to fees. And maybe in those cases, it's almost still awkward. Why would a sewer district success mean that everyone's paying twice as much? Everyone's flushing their toilets all that much more often. There's something weird going on there as well. Water districts typically are not trying to get people to use more water. So the problem that I have is that attempting to think through regular performance-based or not, regular raises and compensation improvements towards the people that work for the government is, I think, really complicated. The governments have allocated the thought process, like the people have allocated the government in order to get a certain type of goal satisfied, and then there were people who were allocated that needed positions that were allocated that needed to be filled by people in order to be paid to satisfy those goals. And I feel like all of that needs to almost feel a little bit static with relation to making the budget processing work. You can run into an awkward situation where someone essentially, they're getting raises as they're working, but now it's like, we don't have the extra revenue in order to pay for that, and now we have to fire you because of that. And so the opposite side, so trying to figure out then how to square this, because I also feel like people get better at their jobs over time. And I've thought through the idea that, somebody who is working on their job becomes more effective and is able to get more work done. And therefore, it also seems wrong, however, to not pay them the salary increase relating to their performance increase. And so that's where I start to get into now the difference I've started to come to in my mind, and maybe no one agrees, but in my mind, between the way that the private sector operates and the way that the public sector operates, which is that in the private sector, if you want something where you can try to get regular raises, which are maybe tied because they're happening because of the success of the overall company, maybe the idea is that your career advancement process. I feel like that's something that the private sector is designed for. The public sector, to me, is where you're looking for a stable job with known expectations, and that the salary range ends up being narrower. But here's where I think maybe I'm now going to say something. If you haven't thought about this, that might be mind-blowing. If you have thought about this, maybe seems simplistic, and also might just seem crazy, but hopefully also redeems any concern anyone has that somebody is thinking that Jay isn't trying to help employees. From the concept of a stable job with known expectations, if you become better at your job and are able to get twice as much work output in half the time, maybe you should actually get to have the same salary, but only have work half the time. So I am really excited about the idea of trying to figure out how to make it so that we tie salaries to expectations, and then hopefully have employees that are, as they get better at their job, working less and less hours and having a higher quality of life in relation to it, as opposed to figuring out how to pay them more. Or because the alternative in some sense is that we start firing employees because that's the other thing, is that, like, imagine if everyone who's working for the company is now doing twice as well, making twice as much work output. You could either fire half of them, or pay them all twice as much, or have them all work half time. And I feel like from the government perspective, it feels like the work half time, but get paid the same feels the most fair. So those are my weird ramblings and thought process in relation to my attempt to come to some philosophical framework for why I think the things that I think. But I definitely believe, to restate, that we should do the CPI modifications on the salary ranges. I think that we should have a policy that does those regularly. I think that we should actually scale everyone's salaries by those. I think that we should attempt to figure out, to the extent we, and I agree with some of Jonathan's comments, that after using these ranges, it might be that we want some adjustment in them, and then part of that, I think, is part of where we then might start to realize that we might have underpaid somebody or something like that. But it's less clear to me that we should be doing performance-based raises, or that we should set an expectation that people will have regular raises throughout their tenure. That's what I got.
Thank you for that, Jay. That's certainly a lot to think about. Are there comments from the board? Director Bertrand.
Yes, I too appreciate Director Freeman's comments. Very, very thorough, and things you mentioned that I hadn't thought about before. So thank you for that. As far as the recommendations in front of us, I think I support recommendation 4, knowing that I absolutely support the regular cost of living adjustments. but I am interested in just having that information as far as what the regular pay and ranges should be for these positions. We know that our workforce is our most valuable asset, and it's what makes continuing this work possible. And we also know how hard it is to retain a workforce in Isla Vista. Any of us who have graduated or are graduating from UCSB in recent years know how few of our friends are still here because it is so hard to find a job. So when we look at creating good jobs that keep people in our community and lead to a high quality of service for our community members, that's a win-win and one of our best responsibilities that we have as board members. So with that in mind, I'm supportive of option 4.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. Are there other comments from board members? Director Deschler.
I think I also agree with what Ethan said. I support number 4 as well. I think it's important to standardize a process and have the process for a CPI and then a process for performance review and separate. A lot of times you'll see in December, or January is when the cost of living is given to employees. I just want to reiterate that I think that this is something that we ought to, as the organization grows, it's real important to have a stable performance system, evaluation system, and policies that employees can count on. That is part of being a good employer, is people knowing kind of the roadmap that they're on for how they mature in an organization. So I think that's something that should happen sooner rather than later. I don't think it's a back burner item, but I also don't think it's something that that our staff need to do, because I think there's experts that do this, that do it well, and that we can get the information we need to make decisions going forward. So those are my comments.
Thank you for that, Director Deschler. Any other comments from board members? We'll all add, I also support option 4. I think it's important for us to provide the adjustment to the salary ranges for inflation. I'd like to see a policy in the future that just makes that automatic. I also agree strongly with Director Deschler that we need policies in place that spell out the review process, that spell out sort of what the process is for raises and things of that nature. And I'll also say I support management partners going in and re-looking at the ranges too, because I can tell you, speaking now to Director Topliff, who brought this up before, as someone who was on that committee that helped work with Jonathan to put together all of the range information. What you do when you try to create a salary range is you look at comparable government agencies. And what we quickly found is that there's not a lot of comparable government agencies to IVCSD. You know, being a organization that is relatively small, being an organization that has a relatively small budget, but an organization that has a broad set of authorities and powers, and in a lot of ways make us very different than, say, a water district where they're employing lots of engineers and things like that, whereas we do not employ any engineers. So it's hard to put it together, but I think management partners looking at it again will be helpful, especially too because I think just as things have changed over this last year with both inflation and the great shakeup that's happening, I wouldn't be surprised if those ranges moved, even based on the employers that we were looking at when some of the ranges were put together a year ago. Are there any other comments from board members? I think we're ready for a motion then. Would anyone like to make one?
I move to enact a cost of living allowance on the salary ranges based on the January 2020 CPI index of 7.5% on all current salary ranges in order to keep up with inflation, and conduct another assessment of the salary ranges compared to the market of like agencies as was done in spring 2021. aka option 4.
I'll second.
Made by Freeman, seconded by Topliff. Is there any other board discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Bertrand,
Yes.
Director Flaherty,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Topliff,
Yes.
Director Dassler,
Yes.
Director Aguilar.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, motion passes. Next, we're going to move to item 5.3, the letter of support for the Santa Barbara MTD. I'll give a brief summary of this. This is a letter that we were asked to write in support of a grant that the Santa Barbara MTD, the transit agency servicing Isla Vista, is applying for. The grant is from the California State Transportation Agency, and as part of the request, the funding would go towards 8 battery electric buses, 3 battery electric micro transit vans, 0 emission infrastructure, and bus shelters. And there's a lot of cool features that are involved in this project. By sending the letter, we will be noted as a supporter in the application to help their score go up as the California State Transportation Agency scores the projects. And I'll leave it at that. Any questions from the board? Director Bertrand.
Yes, I'll just mention that as an avid MTD user and bus rider, I'm really excited about this. Already by riding the bus, our community members are helping reduce our local greenhouse gas emissions by taking single occupancy vehicles off the road. But this really, really advances the efficacy of riding the bus and helping reduce emissions. I know that many local advocates have been pushing the MTD to adopt more rigorous climate goals, and this really will help them do that, and something that our whole community can be proud of. And I think too, by stepping up to support this, we continue to make sure that Isla Vista residents and UCSB Santa Barbara City College students are at the forefront of consideration when planning for regional transportation needs.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. Are there any other questions from board members? Well, seeing that, I'll open it up for public comment. We do have one comment in the chat from Mark, who says that he had to leave, but he is strongly in support of the MTD applying for the funding for the 8 electric buses, 3 micro transit vans, 0 emission infrastructure, and bus shelters, and says that these are essential items for public transit mode shifts and making our local agencies more climate resilient. So thank you for that comment, Mark. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak on this item? If so, please hit the raise hand button or put something in the chat. All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. I'm going to bring it back to the board. I'll just share some final thoughts. I really want to thank MTD for the work that they are putting in to apply for this, and wish them the best of luck. I will echo what Director Bertrand mentioned about how important this is for our climate goals. The main driver of greenhouse gas emissions in Santa Barbara County is vehicle travel. And this is a big step towards making transit, which is already the cleanest option, even cleaner. And Isla Vistans are avid riders of public transit. This is the place in Santa Barbara County where we're seeing the largest increases in transit ridership. So our constituents are very supportive of transit. I'm certainly hopeful that this is part of a generational shift that is occurring of more acceptance and more utilization of public transit, because I think that that's something that's so crucial to us really making progress on fighting climate change and moving to a net zero emissions in our community. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of the letter of support for the MTD grant application.
By Bertrand, is there a second? Seconded by Flaherty. Any further board discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Dr. Brent,
Yes.
Director Flaherty,
Yes.
Director Bertrand,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Topliff,
Yes.
Dr. Deschler,
Yes.
Director Aguilar.
Yes.
Motion passes. All right, now we're going to move to item 5.4. This is the LAFCO Special District member election.
But
and-
before you actually begin this agenda item, I would like to recuse myself from this agenda item. I receive a small to me, but definitely non-trivial amount of money from LAFCO for being on this position. And so I'm going to exit this discussion.
All right. Thank you for that, Director Freeman. So this is an item, this is the ballot for the Santa Barbara LAFCO Special District member. Director Freeman is the Special District representative on LAFCO. And my understanding of the process, and Jonathan, you can add if you have a different understanding, but mine is that this is a vote that the board has vested their power in me to make as the president. I wanted to bring it to the agenda now that it is an official ballot. Initially, this process sort of happened in a caucus. I'll call it a smoky back room because I think that that's kind of what it was, maybe without the smoke. But they did not reach quorum at that meeting, and so now it is all vote by mail election, which probably should have happened in the first place. But this is for a representative on the local agency formation commission. They are the independent nonprofit that is charged with approving or denying boundary expansion requests for districts, service expansion requests for districts, the merging or incorporation or creation of new agencies, and a multitude of other things that I won't really go into. I was hoping Director Freeman could share some of the updates of the different things that have been going on, but we'll have him give a later report on a different item that's not connected to the vote. So with that, Jonathan, is there anything else you want to add to this?
Nope, nothing else to add.
All right, Director Deschler.
So I don't know if I'm missing something, but all I see is a blank piece of paper with that you're supposed to add two names. Like, how do you know who to select? Am I missing something? An attachment?
I might have attached the second page and maybe not the first page, but it should just say Jay and Ed Fuller are the two candidates.
I think that's what happened.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that happened, but yeah, that's what I attached the wrong page.
I was like, how do you know who to select? There's no options. There are no options. Okay, got it.
I was confused too.
Oh, I'm so glad. I like to be in good company.
Okay, well, thank you for catching that. I'll say that the second question on the ballot is to change the process. My understanding is to change it so that LAFCO staff doesn't have to do the smoky backroom thing where they try to get quorum. I know Jay was working hard to try and organize special district presidents to be there and vote in case they did get quorum and fell a couple of members short. So now it will just all be vote by mail, which is honestly how we voted last time. So it's what I'm familiar with as well. So yeah, with that, Jonathan, do you think you could just share a screen on the ballot that is?
Yeah, I'm pulling up the ballot from LAFCO. It's
So are you asking us who you should vote for? Or are you asking us to enable you to vote?
Yeah, I'm asking for any input or advice on this item. I had hoped I should have coordinated better with Director Freeman to see if I was hoping that he would just share a little bit about his candidacy on this item. But again, we can have them do that at a later time.
After we vote.
Yeah.
Here's the ballot.
Well, obviously we want Jay, right? I mean, I can't even think this is a question.
He's our guy. Come on.
I mean, he loves it. He's good at it. He dedicates huge amounts of time to
He's
it.
great.
He explains it all to us. What else could we ask for?
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thanks for that feedback. Yeah. So it didn't need to be an awkward thing. I'd hope, like I said, that we could just hear from Jay, but I think that's good feedback from the board.
I guess we don't need to take action then, right?
I don't think there's any action needed.
No, you need a motion from the board to, who's going to be sending in the ballot?
It's all under the presiding officer has all the designation of authority.
Okay, then I think you should have a motion, a formal vote to authorize the president to vote for Jay Freeman.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Made by Topliff, seconded by Bertrand. And before I forget, we should go to public comment. Any public comments on the motion or on this item? Please hit the raise hand button or put something in the chat. All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. We have a motion on the table, made and seconded. Is there any further board discussion?
I'll just say I know me and Director Freeman don't always agree, but I greatly admire his passion for this work, his dedication, and his expertise.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. I'll also say I really appreciate the heads up that he gives Jonathan and I when things are coming before LAFCO. He has been on the commission, and under that current commission's leadership, they've hired a new executive officer that I believe is taking the organization in a really good direction and has allowed for improving relations. It's no secret that LAFCO and Isla Vista have had a strained relationship going back to the 1970s, and that unfortunately continued even up to the creation of this district. And I think having one of our own there has really served to help ease over those tensions, and that we are more accepted in the Santa Barbara community because of Jay's service on this commission, and because of the work of our staff working with LAFCO staff, et cetera.
Yeah, I was just going to say, everything that you said, Spencer, I really agree. I think it's so great that Jay likes this and that he's putting a lot of time in it, and to have an IV representative before this board, when this board can play a lot of very crucial role in Isla Vista, is so important. And I just want to say, if Ed Fuller's watching, it's no offense to you, Mr. Fuller, but we just have to go with our own guy here.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Director Deschler. So with that, there's a motion on the table, made and seconded. Jonathan, let's do a roll call vote.
Director Brandt?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Topliff?
Yes.
Bertrand?
Yes.
Deschler?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
I have a quick thing. We do need to go back to the previous item on the ranges, and I forgot to ask if we could have a date for the readjusted salary range. I just missed having that we didn't get that in the motion, and that was my bad for not reminding you. So we just need to set a date. I think we said January 1st or February 1st. So
okay, so we're going to move back to item 5.2. Budget discussion on employee salary ranges and benefits. And would someone like to make an amended motion?
I believe the CPI is as of February 1st. So,
yeah, this was published February 1st.
so I would make a motion that we make the salary range increase effective February 1st, 2022.
Great.
Made by Topliff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I will second.
Seconded by Deschler. Is there any further board comment? All right, let's do a roll call vote.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Director Brett,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Topliff,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Deschler,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. We're going to move to item 5.5, which is resolution 22-2, subsequent adoption of AB 361. This is the remote meeting under the emergency order provisions, reauthorizing resolution. And I assume District Council is going to give an update on what that looks like now as different health orders are changing in our county and at the state level. If I could ask you right now, if you could share that report so that we get an idea, as we're talking about remote meetings.
Yeah, of course. And for each of these resolutions, I do check the relevant health agencies that have jurisdiction over where the district is located. So I check the Santa Barbara County Department of Public Health website to see what their newest order is, and I include that information in the resolution so that it's there for the board and it's there for the public. The situation continues to change. I think everybody is pretty well informed about that. But the conditions to utilize the remote meeting provisions under AB 361 continue to be present. And I like to remind the elected and appointed officials that I serve that it's not required. This is an option that exists for the board, given the conditions surrounding COVID and given the requirements of AB 361. But the state's mask mandate has obviously elapsed after being extended, and the governor is indicating that the state is moving to an endemic response, which is to say treating COVID as endemic rather as a pandemic, essentially putting it on similar footing to how other viruses that are more common. There still continues to be community spread, but the measures focus on mitigation and basically how to live with it, as opposed to some of the past practices of having shutdowns and mask mandates, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a couple of two bills in the Senate right now that have to do with vaccinations, but they don't apply to the district, so I won't go over them. But the first thing that the board needs to know is that the state of emergency persists. The governor is certainly receiving his share of criticism for having that be the case, but it doesn't change the fact that is the case. And that is the first element of what is required in order for AB 361 to be used. So as long as that state of emergency continues to exist, then the first element for AB 361 will be met. The second element is where I look at the Santa Barbara County health orders to see what it is that they are recommending and what is it that they are no longer recommending, if they've rescinded orders, et cetera. And the key for AB 361 is the continued either requirement or recommendation of social distancing, and then kind of as an adjunct to that, mask requirements. Those are recommended. Social distancing is still recommended. Masks are still recommended, especially if people are unvaccinated, but especially those who are going to be indoors where social distancing might be more of a challenge, or if you're going to be indoors for a prolonged period of time. So if there is a local health order that recommends social distancing and other health mitigation measures, then the second prong for AB 361 is satisfied. Now, I always mention this, but it never seems particularly relevant because there's always a health order. But as the health situation continues to evolve, the second prong of AB 361 allows as an alternative for the district board to make findings that in their specific community, the health risk still exists. And if you make those certain findings, then you can still utilize AB 361 remote meeting procedures. Again, as long as the state of emergency persists. So the conditions are there. AB 361 is satisfied. It's not required. And the other thing I like to remind my boards is that this is the alternative to the teleconferencing rules under the Brown Act. These remote meeting procedures are less onerous, and they provide more security for public officials who are not meeting at the table. But the biggest thing is it relaxes the jurisdictional requirement with respect to where directors are. Director Freeman, for example, is in Colorado. Under the teleconference provisions of the Brown Act, you have to have a quorum of the board present within the boundaries of the agency. So you would not be able to operate if multiple directors below a quorum were outside the boundaries of the district. Under AB 361, you can. So that's a pretty big level of flexibility. But ultimately, it's up to the board to make the decision as to whether and how long to continue, meeting remotely. Certainly, the board has discussed the impacts on public participation, and I think Director Freeman gave a very robust report on meeting in person versus meeting online, and gave his opinions on that. And that's all for the board to take into consideration. But to wrap up my report, the conditions are there. The state of emergency persists, and a local health order does continue to recommend social distancing, wearing masks, and other health mitigation measures. So if the board would like to continue to have the option of using remote meetings through March, then the appropriate motion would be a motion to approve Resolution 22-2.
Thank you for that report, Council. Are there any questions from board members? Well, seeing none, I know that Council is going to continue to keep tabs on pending legislation related to this. My understanding is that there is at least one piece of legislation that would end the statewide emergency that could have an impact on all of this that has been scheduled for hearing, I believe, sometime in March. And so we know it's a fluid situation. We're thankful for the reason why it's a fluid situation, because our numbers of case rates continue to improve, and the health and safety of our community continues to improve. But we've also been here before, and we'll keep a watchful eye to those numbers and to what our public health officials are saying. I think their recommendation is more than enough for us to continue supporting these online options at this time. Are there any other thoughts or feedback from the board? I'll open public comment. Is there any public comment from members of the public? You can hit the raise hand button or put something in the chat. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 22-2, adopting AB 361 for March of 2022.
Motion made by Topliff. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Bertrand. Any other thoughts from the board? Okay, Jonathan, can you do a roll call vote?
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Flaherty,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Topliff,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Deschler,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Now we're going to move to item 6.1, which is reports, first from members of the board. Do any board members have reports that they'd like to share? Director Bertrand.
Thank you. Well, Director Brandt, you spoke about the safety issue in our community that we experienced over the weekend, but just to add to that, I wanted to express gratitude for UCSB's emergency notification system. I've noticed a lot of improvement over these past few months, and it's not good news when it comes out, but it is appreciated, and it helps people stay aware of what's going on and make decisions for their personal safety. So I appreciate the improvements we've seen and hope to continue to see those.
Can I make a comment?
Director Deschler.
Thank you, Ethan. Gosh, nobody ever says nice things about the university. No, I'm kidding. Just not lately. So what I wanted to ask, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I know you'll tell me, but I think it would be really worthwhile to have at a board meeting our Clary coordinator to come and talk about the Clary Act and how UCSB does its alerts, because it's all based upon federal act called Clary. And some people think that, anyways, I won't go into it, but I just think there might be value in that. And Ethan, I will definitely pass along your appreciation to the folks that do those notifications, because they never get anyone saying nice things to them.
Thank you, Director Deschler. Are there other reports from members of the board? Seeing none, I will share on the safety issue. I appreciate your comments, Director Bertrand, and I share your perspective. I had the chance with Jonathan to meet with the new lieutenant at the Isla Vista Foot Patrol, Lieutenant Morris, and one of the issues that we spoke about was public communication during active public safety emergencies and situations. And we had a good conversation about that. I think that the lieutenant was very interested and open to hearing what we had to say, and did follow up with me after the unfortunate shooting happened on Friday night to let me know just a report on what was going on. And so I just also want to thank him because I know that those reports, when you've got two agencies with similar jurisdictions, I know that there has to be coordination there. So I appreciate the sheriff's office role in helping make that communication happen as well. We also spoke about the Spring Festival, which I think I gave a report on our conversations about. We also spoke with him about our alternatives to policing and the different models that we've investigated in the past. He seemed eager to want to hear more and to get to know things better. In addition, we also spoke about vehicle and pedestrian safety on Friday and Saturday nights in Isla Vista, particularly along Del Playa. A number of weeks ago, we saw an unfortunate motorcycle accident where a motorcyclist crashed into a vehicle. And unfortunately, as a result of that accident, the cyclist was badly injured and I understand is making a recovery. Unfortunately, that vehicle that he crashed into was a vehicle where there were people living inside. And so there was an effort made by the community services and the rapid rehousing specialists to get them rehoused. And it's just such, I think, an unfortunate situation, but a reminder that a lot of what we see with crowds on Friday and Saturday nights can be incredibly unsafe, both for pedestrians, for people in their vehicles, for cyclists, for people on scooters, all the way around. And so we spoke about that. And it's an item that I asked us to have a more robust discussion at the Isla Vista Community Network meeting on, because I think there's a lot of perspectives there that would be helpful to be shared. And the last thing that we spoke about too is allowing a chance for Lieutenant Morris to come introduce himself to our board, which we're going to coordinate at a future board meeting date. But overall, I was appreciative of him taking the time to meet with us and start the relationship with under his new leadership. Two other quick things: the ATP Cycle 6 is going on right now. Jonathan and I had a meeting with the Public Works staff about what that means, which is that they are preparing an application, a grant application, to apply for the Active Transportation Program. And we had a meeting about how we can coordinate our efforts with STEP. A lot of whether you succeed or fail in a really competitive grant application process like that is how much public outreach you've done, and how you can demonstrate that on paper to the state agencies that review it. And so we have a great opportunity to share a lot of the outreach that's being done with our STEP plan, even though the plan doesn't even exist yet, and add that in there to make that grant application more competitive. They were really close to getting it last time, and we're hopeful that we can help improve the score for a future submission. I think that's actually the end of my report. Actually, I fibbed. I've got one more thing that I was going to add. Carrie and I had a chance to visit the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District Forward Ever, Backward Never event today. There was live music, poetry, art, snacks, and I believe right now, or just finishing up, is a screening of the movie The Black Panther. Obviously, we couldn't stay for the movie because we're here tonight at the board meeting, but we had a great chance to listen to some poetry, and I just want to congratulate the IVRPD on hosting a great event. So with that, we're going to move to reports from standing and ad hoc committees. Are there any committees that would like to share updates? Seeing none. Oh, I see a hand. Director Destler.
I think we should, we haven't met, but I could give a status update on the parking group. Jay, do you think, you normally do this, but I'm happy to say that we haven't really done a lot, except that we're trying to schedule a meeting with our two organizations that have submitted a request for proposals, responded to a request for proposals. So we're planning to meet with them, and that's our update. Anything else, Jay? Okay.
Having not met, there isn't much to update, and that is the one thing that, yeah, we have been trying to do. So
we're working hard to work hard.
Thank you for that update, and thank you for your service on that. Next, we're going to move to a report from District Council.
On the issue of parking, I actually had a sit down with the parking committee. I was fortunate enough to be in the area for another client, so I was able to see Jonathan for the first time in person. And I certainly felt closer to the other members of the parking committee since I was in the resource room to meet with them. And we just went over really what the Parking District Power is. We went through some of the provisions of the Parking District Act, and then how that Parking District Act interfaces with the powers in 61-250. So I answered a lot of really great questions that were raised, and I got a sense that the Parking Committee has got a good foundation for how they can move their efforts forward. Beyond that, really just two or a couple of reminders. One, you should be getting your notifications from the county to file your Form 700s. That's your annual disclosure form. I've completed mine. Also, check your records to see if you need to do your AB 1234 ethics training, or if you need to update your harassment avoidance training. So those are typically 2-year requirements. CSDA, Special Districts Association, California Special Districts Association, has a lot of online programs, and my firm also provides that for our clients if that is something that people want to look into. Other than that, I'm looking forward as we creep ever closer to potentially, hopefully, maybe going back to in person on a more regular basis. Looking forward to it. And I think coming up in March, I don't know if we're going to have a meeting by then, but we're coming up on the 5th anniversary of the district. If my math is right, and even though I am a lawyer, I'm pretty sure I can count to 5. And so I think that's a pretty excellent milestone. I was talking with Jonathan in preparation for this meeting recently, and just look how far you all have come. Look where you started, and look forward to what is yet to come. So congratulations on that. And I'll repeat myself, I'm sure, when the actual date comes around, but I really hope all of you are very proud of what you've been able to accomplish in a very little time under very awkward and weird and trying circumstances. This is a unique client that I look forward to serving pretty much all the time.
Thank you for that report, District Council, and thank you for those words of encouragement. I see a hand from Director Freeman.
Yeah, one piece of question / clarification. I think that meeting that we had with you was before our last board meeting, because I think I remember us mentioning it the last time, and that's also just to provide context for why both Kirsten and I said that we had not met. As I think that we had not met from the cool you provided the update. I just want to make sure that no one was like, wait, did Kirsten and Jay just lie to us? I just I thought that was the key. Maybe we forgot. I do have a question. Are there any other forms that we're supposed to file other than the Form 700?
Nope. You use the Form 700 when you assume office.
Okay.
You use the Form 700 for your annual reporting, and you use the Form 700 for when you're leaving office. You just check a different box. There may be different attachments that you include based on your specific financial circumstances. For example, if where you receive your employment from, if you own property, company investments, that kind of a thing. So attachments A, B, C, D, and I think E. I think there are 5 of them. Typically, they cover all of the different types of potential disclosures you might need to make.
Is it maybe that we have to file a form that says that we're not spending money on a campaign? I feel like I keep getting some kind of message from the elections division annoyed about something, and I'm not now remembering what it was.
That's the Form 470, Jay.
Okay.
And I assume that's something that Ross is not allowed to counsel us on.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. Next, we're going to move to a report from General Manager.
Well, a lot of the report was on the agenda, but this week, so I reminded you all, but Sydney sent out another invite too. We've got the lighting walk tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the community center. We're looking to have a big turnout for that, and a lot of partners involved. So if you can make it, please make it. Sydney's working on the budget process survey, which our finance committee is going to look at soon. And our February newsletter went out on Tuesday. Hopefully you all got it. And she's been working on the STEP grant survey, which is now finally done. We have a new logo or slogan for it, which is "Let's Go Isla Vista," or in Spanish, "Vamos Isla Vista." So we're excited about that, and it's finally done. It's in translation mode right now to Spanish and Mandarin, and it's launching. So she's been working really hard on getting that done. Every week there's something else to fix, but it's done now. Our Ivy Beautiful group, they're up and running again. I reported last week that they were just getting back from sick leave, and they're back in it now, and they're working on their annual report for the board. Safety stations, we're working towards an agreement with IVRPD. Kimberly and I have, both committed with each other to get it done for the spring quarter. So we're for the 3rd addition to the safety station. So we're working on that. I sent the board the November and December interpersonal violence investigator reports, which, that annual report's coming up pretty soon too. The Ivy Community Room and Community Center, really exciting stuff. We have dance classes up and running again, which is on Tuesdays and Thursdays at the Community Center. Every Tuesday and Thursday is salsa and other kinds of dances being taught. We've got computer literacy back up in the community room on Thursdays, and we've got yoga coming soon to the community center, where we just found a teacher. So that plus the Bookmobile Cafe, we've got 4 programs that Maya has been able to set up to have a regular schedule. And we're talking about getting a schedule finished soon that we can put out in some way to promote. Here's the 5 or 6 regular events plus some big ones that are one-offs happening soon. So we can do some better promotion. But she's been getting a lot of these programs set up. A lot of them were ones we had before. We're just bringing them back pretty much. So tutoring is the next one to hopefully bring back. That's the last one we need to bring back that we had before the pandemic. So that's going really well. Today, me and Maya actually went around to Picasso and Abrego and other areas where families live in Isla Vista to put up some flyers around there just to make sure more people come to the dance classes. The facilities, so just to like change my report from last time on the CDBG grant, so the new allocation for the grant that we pledged to 50,000 that we approved the funds again today is 175,000 about for the shade structure for the community center and 75,000 for signage and lighting. And the work's supposed to be complete by May is the estimate. Maya and Sydney are going to be working on the signage, which we will be getting the chance to design every letter and word of and placement, but we do have 10 days to do that, and they will be permanent installations. So we're going to be working hard on that for the next 2 weeks. If anyone wants to help or give ideas, please let me know, because there'll be important fixtures in our community. So 3 signs, one for the community center, one for the entrance to the 970 lot, and then one on the community center that's like a digital sign for events and such. That's the idea right now. Parking, I do want to add, not to correct our committee, but we did have one major meeting, which was with the Planning and Development Department at the county. So we had a really good meeting with them. I think we learned so much from that group, and we are making moves. We have the Coastal Commission is finding times to meet with us. So we have had a good row of meetings so far. Let's see, our retreat, March 19th seems to be the date. From everybody who filled out the survey and who emailed me back, March 19th, we can do it in person. The previous assumption, or it was my understanding, was that the construction at the community center would be happening already, but it won't by March 19th. So we can be outside on our own patio with with our own facility, do a retreat. So it'll be great. So March 19th, mark your calendars, 10 a.m. It's a Saturday. And then one thing I'm working on for the retreat, I'm working on lots of things, but one of the agenda items that's now done, if you want to like talk about it or look at it first, is the staff structure org chart. So we have one. It's just in draft mode. It'll be at the retreat. Our finance committee is meeting next week it's the first meeting to get moving on the budget. And then our partners, or our management partners, they're going to be working on the policies that we talked about today on salaries and evaluation and all that. We're still trying to figure out this 457B benefit that we promised to employees in June, and we haven't been able to pay into yet. And we're working on the Family Medical Leave Act issues that we're working on. So that's our report.
Thank you for that, Jonathan. Are there questions for Jonathan? Director Topliff.
I had remembered that the shade structure, there was a hard deadline of April 1st. And now during May, so is that going to interfere with the April 2nd festival?
No, I was wrong in how I described it or how I understood it, but they have to spend the money by April, but the construction can keep going. But they're not even planning to start construction. I have requested and have not yet received a construction schedule, because we had almost canceled events in March that we had been under the assumption that construction would be starting before then. But we didn't. We thankfully are keeping the events. But yeah, we asked for a construction schedule because they told me now that the construction should be towards the end of April and into May, because the poles for the shade structure are in special order and they need to get them. So that's fine, but I've let them know the April 2nd event is critical, and they understand that they can't be out there, and they promise to not be. And I hope to get a schedule soon, and hopefully they're not there when the election polling station is on June 7th, because that's pretty close to May as well, and a major event at the community center each year. So yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. How do you spend $75,000 on signs? Are they platinum? And also, you all are doing the work. So are you billing for your time? I mean, it's crazy to me.
We're going to figure, I mean, that's what's left in the budget. It's not necessarily what we're going to spend, but the budget was 250,000 for the shade structure, signage, and lighting. Originally, it was only going to be 250 for the shade structure. And our board was asked to co-sponsor the grant. We actually became the applicant and matched 50,000. And so the county still wanted to do the shade structure. That's been in like the plans from a long time ago. But we had said, well, we want to add signage and lighting into it as part of the discussion. So if it doesn't get spent all the way, it would, so the way it works is there's 200,000 from the CDBG, and then there's 50,000 from the CSD. And so most of the CDBG money will be used for the shade structure, and then 25,000 will be used for the lighting and signage. If we need more than that, it'll dip into the 50,000 we've pledged. If we don't need more than that, the 50,000 can then maybe be used for other purposes. So, but we're sticking with the scope. I'm trying to get let's fixate on the scope we applied for. But yeah, we'll look at what prices and everything look like. We're going to work closely with them because we are the applicant here, but the county's managing the project because they're the owners. So it's an awkward situation.
I just want to say a big thank you to Jonathan for all your work coordinating this. I know you probably developed at least 1 or 2 gray hairs over the last month trying to work this out with County General Services, and I just appreciate you sticking with it because I know it has not been fun, and I appreciate you sticking up for us. We should be in the loop on these decisions. We're a government agency that deserves to be treated like a partner and not a footnote. And I appreciate you sticking up for us. And it's something, the importance of the timeline here is something that I'm going to be bringing up as I meet with our elected representative at the county and their staff. I'm meeting with Ashley Krusel from Supervisor Hart's office tomorrow, and this is one of the things we're going to talk about is that timeline, in addition to all the other things regarding the alternative event and our vision. So really just want to say thank you, Jonathan. It's been a tough one.
We're getting there.
I had one question too. It's so awesome to hear about all of the programs that Maya has been getting off the ground in that space. For board members too that haven't had a chance to visit in the last like 2 or 3 weeks, I encourage you to drop by because Maya has really worked artistic magic on the space, and it looks so much better than it did a month ago. And Carrie and I and John had a chance to meet there. It was our meeting spot for IVRPD meeting a couple of days ago. It's just great. A question about the programs is my understanding is part of our budget process has a program review of the community center programs. And I couldn't find the document. So could you remind me what date that is planning to be on the board agenda?
Yeah, well, it was originally, I'm glad you asked because I'm changing it, but it was originally going to be March 22nd, but I'm going to make it March 8th instead, which is the next meeting, because Maya is also going to report on the activity for the last 2 months at that meeting too. So we'll get an update on what's been going on and how it's all looking, and then talk about how we want to fund the programs moving forward. And we're splitting this up into multiple discussions, the community center and other community programs budget discussion. So this is part one will be next week.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions for Jonathan? All right. Well, seeing none, we will have our next regular meeting date on March 8th at 6 p.m. right here on Zoom. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Before that motion, I just want to wish our board member, our fellow board member, happy birthday tomorrow, Marcus, big 3-0. That's all. And I'll move to adjourn.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Marcos.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. I think there was a motion in there somewhere.
Yep.
And I seconded.
Eschler, seconded by Topliff. Any last minute discussion? All right, let's go to a roll call.
Director Brent,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Topliff,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Eschler,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. Thanks, everyone. I hope you all have a great evening.
Bye.
Thank you.